Welcome back to the program. Thank you most kindly for staying with us on Daybreak, and it's time for us to get interactive. The idea is simple. You join the conversation, add your voice, feel free to share your opinions, your thoughts, your suggestions, your recommendations, and we're talking about something that I have a feeling would trigger, maybe trigger is not the best word, but stimulate a lot of people to actually say a thing or two. Now, we've heard so many propositions from the TUC, from the NLC about what is a fair minimum wage to give Nigerians, especially under the current economic climate. But we want to hear from you, hopefully workers, concerned citizens, as we like to say it more often than not. What you think is a fair wage increment, given the current state of affairs in the country, the energy concerns, rent, education, inflation, all of the things, consumables, inflation, exactly, general inflation itself at an all-time high. What would a fair wage look like in your view? I mean, in Edo State, for instance, we understand the state government is moving ahead, jumping the gun, I might add, going to 70,000. But then again, Edo State has always jumped the gun in that direction since Adams Oshomole, went past the 30,000 naira minimum wage to give them 50. Now, Governor Obaseki is saying 70,000. The federal government, in, I suppose, a good gesture to mark this year's Workers' Day, also announced that salary increment. However, the whole conversation about the minimum wage is still on. The Tripartite Committee is still working on what would be the official minimum wage going forward, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks we'll begin to understand what those new figures would look like. But as a worker, as a Nigerian, what would be a fair wage to ask under the current economic climate? I mean, it's like giving people a blank check, if at all it's something that is applicable in this case. Yeah,
and we want you to be able to justify why you think that that would be a fair wage.
Not some wishful thinking type of approach.
All right, we have our numbers displayed on the screen. There are two of them. If you try one and it's not going through, you try the other. Like you said, we really would want to hear from you. And it would also, just to add, that it would really be nice to also hear from women, who do the bulk of managing the funds that come into the home, to give us a sense of what would be an ideal wage for the Nigerian worker. The lines are open, like Abdullahi said. We really would want to take your views on this so that we can consolidate on these conversations and get a sense of what it will take.
Now that I think about it, Sunday, is how democratic is this process of minimum wage review? I know they held the town halls across the 6 geopolitical zones. I mean, the organized labor speaks for Nigerian workers. Basically, you have NECA speaking for employers. You have the government, speaking for the people running the show, looking at the books, knowing what is realistic and all of that. And we've seen so many numbers, 615,000, 400,000, 300,000. Realistically, we also know that, that is the asking price. It's not necessarily going to be the number that comes out at the end of the day. However, there's something to be said about the realities of Nigerians right now. And what seems to be the issue is our problems are always bigger than the scale of anything that looks like a solution. So realistically, the problems are just way, way above what the government can even attempt to do to offer as a solution. So if you have a 500,000 naira problem, and the person you're talking to can only afford 50,000, what can you realistically do in that particular situation?
It's a difficult one, to be honest. And like you did acknowledge, there are so many variables, so many. And the argument sometimes on the part of government and some other persons is that you can't throw money at everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Some of these problems are structural and they require a structural solution. Understand we have our first caller.
Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Okay, it appears we're having some connection challenges there, but do try again. Give it another try. Try one of the two numbers and hopefully we'll get to have a conversation. Hello, good morning and welcome to the program. State your name, please, and your location.
Welcome to the program. State your name, please. Good morning. I'm Mr. Ahmed from Lokoja, Kogi State.
Ahmed from Lokoja and Kogi State, please turn down the volume of your TV set and go ahead with your thoughts.
Please turn down the volume of your TV set and go ahead with your thoughts. Yes. I want to appreciate you all this morning for your good job for bringing this program live to the station. You see, as we have like this in this country, we all know that the country is difficult and everything is hard for even the civil servant and non-civil servant. Please, if the government can do something in time concerning the minimum wage, because right now the senators, they are not thinking before they will do what they want to do to their own salary, neither to get what they want to get from the federal government. Then why would the civil servant be suffering when those elected people or elected positions are just deciding on whatever they want to do, and at the time they will get what they want? It's unfair to Nigerians.
Yeah.
It's very, very unfair. We vote those people in for them to talk for us or speak for us, not for them to come and become a problem on the civil servant. Please, we want Nigerians or the current government to do something concerning the minimum wage in time, because Nigerians are lamenting, they're suffering. Please, something there to be done fastly, please. Please. Yeah. Speak my message to the Mr. President. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Ahmed from Lokoja. I appreciate you for joining the conversation. And it must be said also that while the focus is on the federal government to really streamline this conversation, the sub-nationals have not been pulling their weight for the most part. I mean, Lokoja, for instance, where Kogi State is, where Lokoja, the capital of Kogi State itself, is home to one of those unending concerns about, workers' welfare. There are so many states we can point to where this has become a norm now. No payment of salaries, monuments, and entitlements, and things like that. Let's speak to our next caller then. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for joining us. What's your name, please, and where are you calling from?
I'm Hafsat Ibrahim from Kano State.
Hafsat Ibrahim, thank you most kindly for joining us. Please go ahead with your thoughts.
Personally, realistically, I feel the minimum wage should be around 90,000 naira.
Right.
Because somebody that is housing a house with 3 or 4 children.
Hello.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, and just turn down the volume of your TV set a little bit so that we can hear you clearly.
Therefore, for him to send those 3 children to school, approximately he needs not less than 30 to 40,000 per term for each or 2 of the children. And the house rent where he's living, he needs about 100,000 minimally to pay. And if he is to contribute 10,000 every month to raise that 100,000, so that he will have that 20,000 for anything that may arise. And at the same time, the transportation to his working place will cost him not less than 20,000 per month.
Right.
And the feeding, everything, maintenance of the house. I mean, that money should be around that amount because Nigerians are really suffering, especially the workers. The workers are not only working for themselves, there are a lot of tentacles attached to them, which they have to. And that's our 90,000 naira. Realistically, it will be fair for them for distribution among themselves. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hafsat, for that breakdown and for your submission. I was nodding along as I did the breakdown in my head and realized that even at 90,000, it isn't much. As she said, if you have to send your children to school and you have to pay, assuming 40,000, which we all know, 40,000 isn't something quite considerable, right? If you're not sending them to a government school, that is. I don't think 40,000 is going to cut it. But if you also have to pay rent, I mean, how many houses can you get actually at 100,000 a year? So you realize that even at 90,000, it isn't even really much.
It just doesn't cut it.
Feeding isn't considered, clothing, healthcare.
All right. Good morning. Your name and where you're calling from?
Good morning. My name is Jibania.
Can you come with your name again, please?
My name is Jibania Bise.
Ifeanyi Did you say Ifeanyi?
Jibani Abise.
Right. Where are you calling from?
From Taraba. From Taraba.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Taraba, Ukari.
Thank you. Go ahead, please.
Sir, what about that the minimum wage? I prefer the minimum wage should be 1 million naira because
You would have to turn down the volume of your TV set. You can't be listening to yourself while making your points. We've lost him, but he said something in the region of 1 million naira. I remember when Labour got into this conversation, there were talks around 600,000.
I thought we said something about no wishful thinking. I mean, I would love to be paid $1 million now, but
That's right.
Is it possible for me to get $1 million now? Maybe not, but the reality is that we want to speak to, what is actually feasible. Okay, let's move to our next caller then.
Good morning. Your name and where you're calling from?
good morning.
Good morning.
My name is John David. I'm calling from Benue State.
Jan from Benue State?
Yeah.
Right, go ahead, please.
Yes, I think if we really are talking about this, we really of a thing, and we mean business, it should be pegged at a minimum of 150,000 naira.
150,000.
A minimum of 150,000.
Okay. Why do you say that?
Imagine a Nigerian professor taking home 30,000 naira as minimum wage, whereas an uneducated and unenlightened and untrained counselor who is elected will take home 300,000, 500,000 naira. This is what the Nigerian democracy has brought for us.
Mr. Jan,
to be practicing or borrowing,
Yeah, Mr. Jan, sorry, pardon the interruption. Is this a hypothesis? You're saying 30,000 a professor. I don't think a professor earns 30,000.
No, we're talking minimum wage here. Nigerian minimum wage.
Okay.
Not his salary. We're talking minimum wage. Minimum wage is the topic of discussion.
Right.
And so, if we really are borrowing a bit from the American democracy or U.S. democracy, should we really have this thing called the National Assembly? What is the job of the National Assembly? What do they do in developing the nation? What do they do in building their respective senatorial zones and where they come from? The people they represent, do they speak for them or they speak for themselves and their tummies? A Nigerian senator could go to a gym or a gymnasium and spend 500,000 as if he's dishing out 50 naira. Because he earns a lot. But should that be the way? Is that the way to go, really? When those who really do the job, who are the engine room of the civil service of the nation, go home with peanuts. What is 30,000 naira for crying out loud?
Yeah, it's an aberration.
As much as what a senator or a house of representatives could offer in the church. And often, every Sunday off.
Mr. John, I quite agree with you on so many fronts, especially with the 150. I think it's realistic. I think it's something that should be considered. I think 30,000 naira is an aberration. I think 30,000 naira is not even...
It's an insult.
It's not even feasible. I mean, given our current inflation. 30,000 naira 5 years ago is worth more than 80,000 naira today. If you look at the inflationary figures and all of that, it has been completely wiped out. I mean, years ago, even before the current economic trend. And unfortunately, this is what we still have, in operation today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jank, for your intervention, sir.
All right, let's move to the next caller now. Hello, good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to the program. What's your name, please, and where are you calling from?
My name is Shaibu, calling from Nasarawa State.
Shaibu from Nasarawa State. Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. I want to really put my view on this issue of the minimum wage. First thing we need to look at as Nigerians, in as much as everybody wants a better welfare package, we should look at the various segments of business and how they have the ability to actually meet up whatever minimum wage Nigerians are clamoring for. Now, in doing business, I'm not a business person, but I work closely with people who have done business. In terms of business, there are abilities that government is supposed to put in place for either established business, growing business, or emerging business to be able to thrive and survive. Now, when you look at the ease of doing business, you see that the basic necessity that individuals need for them to carry out good business and make profits where they can be able to meet up whatever expectation of their staffs are not being met. And what are these basic necessities? We're talking about light, we're talking about cost of generally so many factors that have to do with business. Now, for example, I have a restaurant and I employ, let's say, an SSC holder who is still seeking admission to come work with me. What do I make on a monthly basis that can afford me to pay such person, say, for example, a 150,000 naira? Because people don't really understand when they say minimum wage, what it means. It means that from the lower cadre of our workforce, whether you are a cleaner, you are a security guard, you are a, what are they calling, receptionist and all that, which is a lower cadre in every establishment, you have to pay such persons the minimum that is acceptable by government. So if we are pegging the minimum wage on 150 or 100,000 naira, what is the availability of these companies to be able to meet up the payment of their staffs from this minimum wage that we are talking about? So what we should be talking about first is whatever minimum wage we are setting, it should be fair for those emerging business. It should be fair for those growing business. We're not talking about the established business at the moment. Now, if it's fair for them, how do we now make those emerging business, those growing business to strive, survive, and tend to grow? Government needs to put in modalities for us to actually work around this and see how we can continue to help our businesses to grow. And on that basis, we'll get it right. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for that apt thought and opinion of yours. And I quite agree. It's a double-edged sword where we have to find, it's a balancing act, really, where it's not just about public sector workers, but also it's something that has to do with the entire industry. And we cannot afford to strangle some of these businesses by putting up unrealistic numbers. But also, I believe that not every business, is directly, no matter how small. I think there's the number. Where is it? Is it 50 and above?
Yeah. So you now understand why this conversation has been complicated. Why it doesn't appear like a quick fix kind of problem, because like you said, it's a balancing act, and it's a fine balancing act for that matter. And you want to be careful that while you try to solve a problem, you do not create another monster.
It doesn't become counterproductive.
That's right.
And of course, to his point exactly, just before we continue with this particular conversation, just to give you a feel of how the day is shaping up, because this is a very big day for Nigerian workers across the country. We're going to speak to Sagir Ibrahim now, who is standing by for us at the Eagle Square, where we're going to see pictures of how things are shaping up, Nigerian workers, as they pull in the numbers just to commemorate this special day. Sagir, good morning. How are things shaping up there at the Eagle Square today? I'm not sure if Sagir can hear me, but we're going to work on that just so we can see how things are shaping up. Plus, we also circle, across the country also to just get a feeling, because workers turn up on this particular day to not only, groan about their challenges, but also to celebrate, because this is, one of those moments where we show solidarity to one another, and also give the politicians a feel of what we actually think about their leadership, because, trust me, you're going to hear a lot from Labour leaders today to drive home this same single message about the welfare, the well-being, and of course the living conditions of Nigerian workers across the formal, informal sectors, across the public and private sectors, and also, all of the other underlying issues that need to be highlighted. Let's not also forget that this is not just about people who are currently in service. It's also about people who have left the service and the situation that they're in right now. Our pensioners, for instance, my goodness. we can spend the whole day talking about the kind of conditions that they find themselves in today, and whether or not their efforts are really and truly being appreciated after the 35-year-long service that they provided for the civil service. As we always know, the civil servants are at the heart of the engine room of government. Without them, much of the things that we're able to do, the electricity, everything else, it's not going to function. Let's be honest about it. It's not going to function. The workers are at the heart of the economy, and they also need to be not only appreciated, but also be put in a position where they feel like, they're getting adequate compensation. And that's the point we're talking about right now in this interactive session. What is a fair compensation for the Nigerian worker at this day and age?
And just to further expand this conversation, that, in that whole delicate and complex mix is the argument by state government that it will be unfair for you to set a similar minimum wage, say for a state like Lagos with a very huge war chest, in comparison to a state, for instance, like Kebbi, that is battling to meet basic amenities and all that. Is that conversation germane? Because the labor guys will tell you, we want something uniform across board. But if these states do not have the same carrying capacity, would it be fair? But the labor guys would also argue that the governors in the poorest states in Nigeria, in parentheses, do not look at these metrics when they fix their emoluments, side by side with the guys from the rich states, or when they ask for things that can only be afforded by some of the bigger states.
But I also think evidence-wise, the first argument about states setting it according to their ability to pay makes a lot of sense, makes economic sense.
Indeed.
You can't put Lagos and Kaduna in the same conversation.
No.
I mean, they're both economically viable, but they're not on the same cadence, right? Even when it comes to federal allocation, for instance, they don't get the same amount. So let's put it
do not even have the capacity to attract the same.
I think at the federal level you can do it because every other federal agency across the state, they work for the same employer, which is the federal government of Nigeria.
Yeah.
But at the state level, there should be, I understand that, there should be a minimum, but also states can go further. And we've seen that with Edo, for instance. We've seen that with Lagos. We've seen that with some of the other states where, Adamawa said, I think when they agreed at 30, he put it at 32. I mean, there's some states who are trying to do more, but also I think a blanket approach would not necessarily be, because there are some of them who are still not able to pay the 30,000.
Yes.
I shouldn't say able, but who are not willing to, because it's about wills half of the time with some of these governors or state governments. So let's have your say. We have a couple of minutes to spare also as we try to give you a sense of how the day is shaping up. Today is Workers' Day across Nigeria, and it's a day of commemoration, a day of reflection, a day to spotlight the issues of welfare, entitlements, the well-being of Nigerian workers across board. So we would love to get your take about what is a fair compensation, what should be the new minimum wage going forward, especially looking at the current economic climate. Give us a call. The numbers are shown on your TV screen. We have two options for you. Take any one of them. Call in. Let's get interactive about, the state of affairs for Nigerian workers, especially in connection with the minimum wage. So far, we've heard from Hafsat in Kano, who said 90,000 should be the bare minimum going forward, considering what Nigerians are going through. Another call from, I think, Shafiu from Nasara, who said, listen, 150,000 is, so let's talk about those numbers, right? Beyond just the issues of the economy and all of that, let's talk about the numbers, because the numbers that have been going around have varied from one point to the other. The last count, it was NLC's position at 615,000, and I think while we all would love for that to happen, I think there's a consensus that we're never going to get anywhere close to that figure. But of course, the conversation or the negotiations are still ongoing. Let's speak to our next caller. Hello, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Welcome to the program. State your name, please, and your location.
My name is Abubakar Umar Njeke. I am from Saradona local government area of Taraba State.
Right, Abubakar from Saradona in Taraba. Good morning. Go ahead.
All right. I believe The best everybody can do is the federal and the state government should agree on a certain amount. Because if you look at what has been happening in the past, they will agree on a certain amount and other state governments will not pay the same amount. Others will pay, agree to pay, and others will. I want to understand this subvention issue. From the removal of the fuel subsidy, you understand that certain amount of money has been added to state subventions. What are they doing with such money? If you go to those states, you will discover the no infrastructure, the no improvement in life. You will understand that those monies are added. But the welfare of the state workers are not improved. There's no infrastructure. They want to keep on buying vehicles jeeps, Lexus jeeps for other people, other some politicians, and they will end up, look at the case of the Ayatollah.
Yeah, go ahead, Abubakar. We can hear you.
Yes. So what I am suggesting is whatever the NLC and the PUC will agree with the tripartite committee, let it be uniform from the federal to the state. Any amount they agree, let it be uniform.
Yeah. This is a perfect opportunity to say agreement is agreement, but then again, the government has over time, Abubakar, shown us that they're not very good at keeping to agreements, haven't they? From ASU to, the resident doctors and so many other agreements. 2009, my goodness, we're still talking about the 2009 agreement between the federal government and ASU that is still being renegotiated over and over the course of the 8 years of the Buhari administration down to the Tinubu years. We're still working on those agreements. Let's get back to Sagir now, who is standing by for us at the Eagle Square in the Federal Capital Territory to give us a feel of how the day is shaping up. Sagir, good morning once again. What can you tell us about how the day is shaping up at the Eagle Square? Hello, Sagir, can you hear us?
It does appear that we are still
yeah, we're going to work on that audio because I think
with that audio. But we can see from the background that clearly that the Eagle Square is already...
Workers are trooping in.
Yes.
This is like Christmas Day for workers.
Yeah.
But, also...
it's one day to look for.
It's just about workers and they have every right to own this day. And I also have to point out that, the announcement of the public holiday came a bit late. And most people were like, didn't the federal government know that this day was coming?
The point is, for the average Nigerian worker, it's a given that the public holiday announcements will come.
Yeah.
So it didn't matter whether it came in early or late. You can be sure that they were prepared not to be. I
was conflicted yesterday because somebody was asking me, "Is tomorrow a public holiday?" And I was like, do we go on public holidays on Workers' Day? I'm not so sure. But then again, I remember every other public holiday for us in the media is usually a working day. So
that's right.
So I wasn't in a position to actually say yes or no until I saw that announcement from the Ministry of Interior. But then again, it's a big day for Nigerian workers. It's a big day for people in both private, public sectors, formal and informal. Take the day off, but also to reflect on the structural issues as you pointed out. And I think that is something that we need to expatiate on, the fact that we're not fixated on just the amount, but also the factors, the variables that actually factor into the conversation. Inflation, for instance, security, transportation,
inflation for
pricing of goods and services.
Even the most critical. So sometimes, or rather, for those of us who have had the privilege of covering this activity, it's largely, some of the fine details are largely around putting so much money in the hands of people and stimulating or worsening.
I mean, if they pay $1 million and then the inflation is at 200%,
it makes no sense.
Okay, let's give it another try. Maybe third time is the charm now. Sagir, good morning once again. What can you tell us about how the day is shaping up at the Eagle Square today?
Good morning, Abdullahi, and a happy Workers' Day to you.
We're here
the third time is definitely the charm. We're here at the premises of the Eagle Square, where we're witnessing the arrival of the different members of the different workers' union across Nigeria. Well, activities are yet to start. It's basically just arrival of these individuals as the seat here in the Eagle Square, gradually becomes packed with these members of the organized labor unions who have come here today to celebrate and mark the commemoration of the Workers' Day here in Nigeria.
Sergey, I know you've been sniffing around. Give us a sense. Are we expecting the president there? And from your interaction with some of these workers, are they excited about the announcements that they've heard? What's their expectations with regards to the president or even the vice president's appearance today?
Okay, so I really couldn't make out much of what you said because of the noise in the premises here. Talking about expectations for, around arrival of VIPs. Well, they've been hushed about whether the president is going to be here or not. Feelers have it, though, that maybe the vice president may be here. Also from the security arrangements here, there are members of the DSS currently at all of the exits and entrances of the Eagle Square. So maybe that might be an indicator, like one of them said, but he was not sure whether it was true or not. So until these VIPs actually arrive, we have not gotten actual information of whom and who will be here today. Now, talking about the reactions of these workers regarding the development last night to this morning, talking about the National Income, Salaries and Wages Commission increasing by 25% to 35%, the wages of the consolidated salary structure of some workers across paramilitary, military, universities, tertiary and the health sector. Well, following the response of the Nigeria Labour Congress last night, calling it a total waste of time since the National Salaries, Income and Wages Commission does not have the statutory powers to review the salary structure of workers. These workers here have maintained, the same momentum, saying, well, until the 37-member tripartite committee submits its report to the president and a new minimum wage is announced, especially, today being May Day, because if you would remember, it has the announcement of the new minimum wage has actually been postponed severally due to the tripartite committee, giving reasons that it has not finished its work, putting together a new minimum wage structure that it would advise the president and the presidency on. So definitely momentum is still around this workers saying that the increase by 25% to 35% is barely just.
Right. Sagir, we're going to let you go for now, as it looks like hundreds of people are trooping into the Eagle Square, where it will be a beehive of activities. But that response of the NLC is quite telling, and it will also be quite symbolic to see whether the president or the vice president is going to be there, because it says a lot. This is the first May Day celebration that the Tinubu administration is going to mark, and historically we've seen presidents attend these particular events. Sagir Ibrahim there giving us an update. We'll circle back to him during the course of the day to hear more about some of these developments. We'll also try to bring you pictures from other states like Lagos, for instance, Kaduna, Imo, where Ajibade is also going to stand by to give us an update on that. Plateau State also, just to give you a sense of how things are shaping up for the Workers' Day. But an interesting response from the NLC in typical fashion, in typical NLC fashion also.
When that information, broke yesterday, people were completely at the lost. We were not even sure what it was meant to achieve. It felt like a rebel rouser, because we are all aware that conversations are still very much on with the committee that was set up by the federal government, which has representation from.
Is this tantamount to jumping the gun?
It does feel like it. We are not sure what the government wants to achieve with this. From some of the feelers we got,
or maybe an appetizer,
perhaps, or maybe an
before
indicator
the main thing, right,
that they are really willing, to improve this welfare, which, if you ask me, kind of sound positive. But we wait to see what all of this is. Hopefully, if we get the president or the vice president to make.
I think the president shouldn't miss this. I think the president shouldn't miss this because he's he likes to come across as a people's person. You know his famous line, "Let Nigerians breathe." You know, Nigerian workers need that. Need to feel that connection, especially if he's back in the country. Since we understand he's back in the country, he should attend. If the president is not disposed, then maybe the vice president. But I think one of them should definitely be there to speak to Nigerian workers on this, very auspicious day. Hello, good morning, and welcome to the program. Who do we have on the line, and where are you calling from? Hello, good morning. We can barely hear who's on the line. Okay, give it another try. I understand that we've lost our connection. Feel free to call in again. We have 2 minutes or so to spare before we double down on today's conversation, which is also going to stay on the Workers' Day celebration. Hello, good morning, and welcome to Daybreak Interactive. State your name and where you're calling from. Okay. I think that's our last chance to speak to another Nigerian who has a thing or two to say about this one. But worry not, we're still going to double down on the Workers' Day, focusing, of course, on the current state of affairs regarding welfare of Nigerian workers vis-a-vis what the conversation around a new national minimum wage is going to look like. More on that after the break. Join us again.